Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a nice day outside, so I'm in a good mood. I'm actually feeling better. I was sick for a while. And if you were watching the training last week, I was only able to do 2 out of the 5 days. I'm going to pace myself. I got water. I think I'm good to go. Let me go ahead and turn some of my captions off. This is a new take on a topic, and I want to make sure I leave enough time to get into it. So let's go ahead and get started pretty quickly. Today, I want to talk about stop selling your solution. And I think the full table or title was stop selling your solution before the customer admits they have a problem. And this is a really important thing to keep in mind, right? If your customer doesn't admit that they have a problem, then why would they ever care about your solution? And that's the premise behind today's training. And it's the same thing for you, right? If you think about what motivates you to buy, that's no different than the customer buying $1 billion tool or solution or something, right? It doesn't matter what the cost is. If the person or the entity buying it doesn't recognize they have a need for what you're selling, then they're never going to pay you $5 or $5 billion, right? And so you need to elevate a customer from not being aware of that problem to being aware of the problem, and then seeing that problem as such a big pain that they need to solve. And so that's a bigger amount of training that I'm going to do today. But today I just wanted to talk to you about how to get them to start seeing the problem before you tell your solution. And I use this example here about I'm always trying to think of analogies or examples that all of us can relate to. So maybe all of us can't relate to cricket or baseball or something. But driving across the country, right? Imagine you're going across the country, a couple thousand miles, you're driving to see family, and you have to get gas at certain points. When will you get gas, right? People have different thresholds or risk thresholds. For me, I'll go down to, quarter tank or maybe it's rest stop breaks type things or something. But, do you get gas at 3/4 full, or are you thinking, I've got almost a full tank, I'm good to go? Do you get gas at a half a tank? At what point do you start seeing the gas in your tank as more of a problem than not a problem, right? And imagine you're going across the country, especially if you haven't done this before. There's certain states that are just long treks. And sometimes you'll see a gas station, but before the gas station, you'll see this sign. And the sign might say, next gas station 200 miles away. Well, now that shifts something in our minds. We're like, holy smokes, 200 miles. Well, my dash says that I got another, 250 miles or something. I'll be fine. But wait, what if there's something that slows me down or makes me eat up more gas? What if there's traffic, construction I don't know about that just slows it down and eats up the gas more? I start feeling like the gas tank being half full, for example, is a threat to me. And so I'm seeing that sign as a message about the problem. Now I'm seeing the problem. I might run out of gas. Now that gas station is looking really attractive, right? Now I want to stop and buy more gas. And it's the same for you, and it's the same for federal buyers. Unless they have that need, unless they feel this need, then they're never even going to be interested in what you're selling. And the reason I was doing today's training is because in Call Plan AI, I have 2 subscribers who last week, both of them were talking about at what point do we talk to the customer about our solutions, our product, et cetera. It's like, well, and I just naturally, because I have sales experience, was like, well, you don't want to talk to them until you have a problem. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, okay. You need to make sure that they know they have a problem. Otherwise, your solution, your product will fall on deaf ears. And that's why I need you to get your customers to be problem aware. And that's what we'll talk about in today's training. If that makes sense to you, put problem aware in the comments. Let me know you understand that your buyers need to be aware of the problem that your products and services solve before you start talking to them about that solution. So put problem aware in the chat. By the way, if you haven't done so already, put your company name and your core competency, 2, 3, 4 words about what you sell in the chat. Let other people know who you are. Say hi. If you're open to connecting, let people know about that as well. In today's training, I want you to stop selling the solution. I want you to start selling to the problem, right? No one's buying your product. They're buying the answer to the problem. And I'm going to break that up into 3 different ways today in the training. The first thing is I want to talk to you about the 5 stages of a buyer's journey as they go along. and start becoming aware of that problem, et cetera. And then I'm going to align it to the federal acquisition life cycle so that you see those two lined up. And then I'm going to wrap up with how to move a buyer to the most aware stage. How do you start moving them forward? I want to give you some tactical tips today on how to do that. Okay, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am founder of callplan.ai, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army as a small business government contractor. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting, it's not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you. This is what you should be able to expect getting out of the meetings that you go into with your potential customers, right? When you understand the process of getting them to be problem aware, you'll have repeatable, predictable results in those meetings. The meetings will go where you hope they will go. So that's why I love coming back and doing this training. If you haven't followed me on LinkedIn yet, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to my government contracting success newsletter. We grow about 100 new subscribers a week because we're constantly putting out information that I think will be valuable to you in your journey. Next week, I got training lined up all this week, and tomorrow's training is my 7-step process for federal revenue success. This is the streamlined process for how do you have success in new agencies or the existing agencies you're in. So make sure you register for that. Join me and others tomorrow. Okay, so let me go put myself down a little bit into a corner. And I want to talk about the 5 stages of a buyer's journey. All buyers go through this. You go through this. I go through this. The federal buyers for sure go through this. And we go at different speeds, right? Sometimes it'll take longer to guide people through. But this journey begins with the fact, and this is something that it's really important you understand right from the beginning, is that your buyer is unaware of the problem. You always have to have the assumption that they're unaware of the problem. If you go in and you assume they're aware of the problem, then you're not going to be able to sell your product because they're going to be confused. Why are you even talking to me? But if you assume they are unaware and they happen to be aware of the problem, you'll figure that out really fast and you'll be able to guide them farther through the buyer journey. But you start at this unaware stage where the buyer doesn't even know they have a problem. I want to use this example of ultraviolet or UV disinfection solutions, or a product that goes into a HVAC unit, sits on top of a building. Not to get too technical because it's not my company or my product. It was just my subscriber last week at Callplan AI was talking about this in net. And I was like, oh, let me latch on to that, because she and somebody else was asking about how do I ask problems, right? Problem questions. And I mean, how do I help my customer understand they have a problem? And this is where you need to start with helping them realize that they do have a problem. These customers are starting unaware. They don't know they have a problem, or sometimes they won't admit that they have a problem. No, we're fine. We're good to go. It's like, are you really? Right? And there's no point in selling further down the sales life cycle if you can't get them to admit that they got a problem, or admit the problem is a severity that it needs to be worked on, or that they don't even know that they have a problem. And so that process, before you even move forward, begins with you knowing what problems does our product or service solve, our solution solve. So with UV disinfection tools or products, one of the things they solve is mold. I'm like, okay, mold, that's a problem. Do you have that problem? I need to get my customer to admit that they have mold and they have problems with their HVAC. And when the HVACs get dirty or whatever, the efficiency drops down, the air quality drops down, all these kind of things. I need to know the problems that my product solves in order to take my customer from unaware of the problem, right? They don't know that they have a problem. They don't know that problems exist in the HVAC, to stage two, which is problem aware. At this stage, they're starting to realize, okay, we do have a problem. People get sick all the time, or HVAC is breaking down. We're spending a lot of money on cleaning services several times a year. In fact, this was one of the things. I mean, Annette was talking about her product sits, let's say, in the $2,500 to $5,000 range, and she noticed a cleaning contract for $500,000 for multiple HVACs. And so when she looks at that, she's like, well, we can sit there and prevent the need to even do that because it keeps it clean all year long. Our product does. I'm like, all right, that's exciting, right? Well, it begins though with her being able to convince the customer that they have this problem, right? And so a customer is at that problem aware stage when they admit it. Yep, we spent a lot of money on the cleaning services. They clean it, it gets dirty. They clean it, it gets dirty. It's kind of like my kitchen. I clean it, it gets dirty, right? And so we're looking for a way to move forward. But at this stage, the customer is just aware of the problem. They're not aware of that they can do anything about it, right? Not that the customer is completely ignorant of things, but they've got all these responsibilities. You're the expert on the product and solution that they need to begin to go down this path to learn about, right? And so they're aware of the problem, but they're not aware of the solutions, or they're not sure what solutions are available to them. I'm going to talk about this more in a minute, but think about in the government stage, this is why they do market research. It isn't just to set something aside to women-owned small business. It's to have discussions around the problems and solutions. What's going on in the commercial world? What's going on in other federal agencies, et cetera. And so at this stage, at stage 2, because they're aware of the problem, they start thinking about a solution. They start thinking, I need to go figure out about and understand the solutions that are out there to my problem. Before I move on, I want to make sure you understand step 2 is the most important part of sales completely. If a customer doesn't understand that they have a problem, then they will never buy from you. Why would they? Why would you buy from anybody if you don't have a problem, right? If you're not hungry, why would you buy a sandwich at Subway or something? You're going to buy lunch when you're hungry, or when you're aware of the fact that you'll be hungry soon. I want to use a quick example of, by the way, you take these examples. Just because I'm using smaller examples doesn't mean these don't apply to billion-dollar problems and solutions. They totally do. Sales is all the same. It's just more activity when you get to a bigger thing. Problem-aware example of when I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. At 18 years old or so, I was selling vacuum cleaners door to door. And back then, people would open up the door and, some would let us in, some wouldn't. But, we'd knock on the door and we're selling vacuum cleaners. Hey, let me show you how this thing works. And the way we helped them become problem aware is we brought their vacuum cleaner out and we brought our vacuum cleaner out and we vacuum a spot in the rug with their vacuum cleaner over and over and over again. You think it's clean yet? We do it 10 times, 20 times. You just tell me when you think it's clean. They're like, okay, it's clean. All right, perfect. We move their vacuum cleaner aside and we bring our vacuum cleaner over and you take the hose off and you put this little white cloth in the hose so it would catch anything coming in. You say, okay. And we turn it on, do one run forward and back, and we show them. It's like, look how much dirt is still in there. Your vacuum cleaner sucks, and ours, well, really sucks, right? And so we help them become aware of the fact that their kids were lying on the floor, the carpets that are dirty. Now you're aware of the problem. Let's start talking about solutions, right? They might think to themselves, well, maybe my vacuum cleaner just needs to be repaired or something. My job in sales is to get them to realize, no, our vacuum cleaner is way better. We'll bring this forward to HVAC units. Right? I'm aware of the fact that my HVAC unit is having trouble. It's either getting dirty and it's got mold, and then it's pushing the mold throughout our buildings, and the quality of the air in our buildings is getting poor. And I'm just using mold because that's the only word I can remember from all the problems that and that's product can solve. But the customer is aware of the problem. Now they are ready for the journey of sales. They are going to buy. It's just whether they buy today or later on. But when a customer has a problem, the only thing they can do is delay the solution to the problem coming along. But eventually, any problem will become so severe that they're forced to buy. And at that point, they're paying triple price and blah, 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 right? So now we need to get them to be solution aware. A customer is going through this journey from they were not aware that they even had a problem to now they're aware that they have a problem. And they're looking around, they're like, well, what solutions are there to this problem? Right? They've done some basic market research at this stage. When they've hit this stage that they're now solution aware, it's because they've done some market research. They've looked on the web, they've gone to a convention and saw different options, whatever it is, right? They know that solutions exist. I see this. There's a lot of solutions out there that exist. Now it's a matter of trying to figure out what to do next. But the key here is that they're not aware of any specific product or solution, certainly not yours, and they're not sure which one is the best fit. I'm just aware that there's solutions out there to my problem. What do I do now, right? And so you're trying to help your customer move through this journey. Sales is not about showing up and saying, you have a need, here's my product, it's $50, give me $50, right? That's not how sales works. That's how Walmart works when you go in. That's called transactional sale. When you go in, you give them $50 and you get a $50 product. In federal sales, we need to move somebody forward to admit that they have a problem, then to recognize that there's solutions out there. I don't have time to wait for my customer to learn that there's solutions. My job as a salesperson, your job as a government contractor, business developer, business owner, capture person, whatever, we're all salespeople. Our job is now to help the federal buyer understand that there are solutions to their challenges. I'm going to talk to you about ours in a minute, but I need to get you aware that yes, your problem can be solved. These are the possible options. So once they're solution aware, our job is to get them to move forward to start selecting a product or thinking about a product, right? And this is where you come in play. Step 4 is product aware. They're aware of your product. They are aware of your product because of the market research and branding. They're aware of your product because you maybe did a demo or something. Whatever it is, because you got in there and had a meeting, they're aware of your products now at this stage, but they're still not convinced yet that it's best. They might start to like it or something. They're like, okay, you're in the running. And this is typical in government contracting, right? There's several of us who can do this work. When I had my last company, we were a Microsoft SharePoint company through and through. And I used to love it when people say, who's your competitor? And I would always say Microsoft because they made SharePoint, right? And they had the big contracts I wanted. But the reality was I had 1,000 competitors or 10,000 competitors inside the federal government who would all say they do SharePoint. My job was to get them to see that we were different, our differentiator. And it could be in your products, it could be in your services. But at this stage, I'm trying to convince them that we are the best, right? That this is why you need to look at our product. If I bring back Annette, it's a little harder for her or different for her, not necessarily harder, but the solution she's trying to kick out or offset with her product as a solution is a service. It's a company that comes in and cleans the HVAC units by hand. They're cleaning it with a toothbrush or whatever, right? She is trying to replace it with a UV disinfection product that you put in an HVAC and all day long, 24/7, it's keeping it clean. And so she's talking to them about more about the product so they understand it. And this is the journey we're trying to take that buyer on so that when they get to step 5, now they are most aware. They're very aware of what you sell, your product, kind of how it aligns in. They're aware of your product and what you like. You've done this with them where you've maximized your product or service's strengths and you've minimized your weaknesses, any of those weaknesses that are in there. They just haven't bit the bullet and given you a contract. And in the federal space, this is kind of normal, right? Because except for the rare occasions, no one's just going to sit there and say, oh, I love your product, I'm buying just it. That is generally a rare thing. The government goes out to bid and send out proposals or quotes, et cetera. But you're getting them to think along the lines of, hey, this is what I want. I want what Annette's product does. That turns into my requirements. I am very aware of what's out there, and I know that this is the direction I want to get. There might be other people who show up, but right now you're in the front running. When you hit step 5, most aware, when you help a customer get to that stage, you're in the best possible position. These are your slam dunk opportunities. These are the ones where you've helped the customer get to the stage. They know they need to solve the problem, and they know that you exist, and they like your company and your offering. So these are the 5 stages of the buyer journey. These are really important ones to remember, but most importantly, getting your customer to be problem aware. Hopefully that made sense there. I know it's a lot of information. You can kind of go back and watch some of this stuff, but the idea is to understand how sales is more than just proposal writing, right? It's more than just seeing an opportunity, writing a proposal, et cetera. There's helping a customer through the journey. How do you get into an agency and convince them that your product's great? How do you convince them that they got a problem? That is a big one, right? Hey, we can solve your problem. Well, you don't even know you have a problem. So these areas are where we're trying to get in. This slide, what I was trying to do here is align the federal acquisition lifecycle to the buyer journey that I just showed you. So I have this particular slide as part of the basically the federal sales cycle, and I have another slide that aligns to the federal acquisition one. But the acquisition roadmap is really complicated. This is a simple way of looking at it, and I really just want you to understand from the left, bottom left here, they're unaware of the problem, and I wanted to figure out how can I align this problem aware of as an action step for you. When can you help the customer or your potential customer begin to understand they got a problem? And so in the light bulb thing, this is where I'm saying you want to give them the idea. If you don't have an RFP or an RFQ that's sitting on SAM that's out there, then you need to go generate that activity. And the way you do it is to get in and have meetings with the right folks. Later this week, I'm going to talk about how Annette can build a list of 200 people within the VA to go talk about the problem and help them become problem aware so that she can start building a relationship. So come watch that as well. But those are the people you want to get in and start talking to about your product and the ideas. So for Annette, she wants to get in there with material that could align or could share with them the problem and help them see the problem. The last slide, I'll give you really good examples of how to do that, what tools you can use to do that, that you already have basically. But the second step, requirement exploration, this is when the government is starting to look out there. They've become, they're kind of aware of the problem. One of the things I wanted to stress here is that just because they're looking for a solution doesn't always mean the government fully understands the problem that they have. This is really the whole idea of an RFI, request for information, is that the government and industry should be talking about the needs that they have, brainstorming around the possible solutions. And then your job is to expand the problem set to help them really understand the problem. They might be aware that they have some problem, but do they understand all the other problems that are related, especially that your product can solve, right? You want to tie all that together, and you can do that really well to help them become problem aware during the requirement exploration phase. And then moving into solution aware. How do they become solution aware? Well, that's on their own. They're doing requirement exploration, looking on the web. They're going out to websites and checking it out, or on LinkedIn, or they move into formal market research, right? That's that second blue box in the middle. Formal market research. This is when they're putting out RFIs and sources sought. This is when they start becoming aware of who's out there and who can possibly help them on the problem. And then as you start thinking about product aware, it's about my product, your product, right? How can we help them really understand what we offer and maybe our differentiators, et cetera? Well, that happens during the market research phase. When you're responding to RFIs and sources sought, you want to kind of double down on exploring the problem a little bit with them and sharing your product and how it aligns to their needs in there. And then the RFP phase, for sure, when you respond with a proposal, you're saying that same thing. You have done capture correctly. You have had meetings that helped you understand the objectives and challenges that they face and aligning your product to it. So you're exploring that problem even within the proposal and leading them in that proposal to the solutions in this natural way. And a good product like Voltron, which I'm about to say, can take care of that. Same with a good proposal manager. And then the last thing is most aware is in the RFP phase. This is when they switch over. They're like totally aware of you and totally aware that that you're the right option and they can be selecting you. One other red arrow I might have put on for most aware is you could do that in the market research. In RFIs, I always like to say, write an RFI to win. And so the idea behind this is you want to be writing your RFIs so well, like it's as if it's a proposal response. That way, you're taking them from not just product aware of your product, but very aware in the RFI phase. Like, oh my God, I love these guys. I had numerous times where the customer fell in love with our solution, our technical approach in the market research phase, the RFI phase. It brought us in to talk, and we were able to reinforce the challenges and problems, and then our solution aligning to that just through conversations. Hey, really quickly, before I show you the last slide, I did want to thank our sponsor for our LinkedIn Lives this year, is Voltron. Voltron helps you write more winning federal proposals with their purpose-built AI. And the reason I love these guys so much is that their focus is heavily on the federal side, really trying to sit there and be the leader in writing federal proposals, RFI and RFP responses back to the government. So going from solicitation to a draft in minutes instead of weeks is something that'll help you really be able to compete when you go after opportunities that are slam dunk for you. So check out Voltron. At the very least, please throw a thank you, Voltron, into the chat. Thank them for sponsoring us. I really appreciate the fact that they do. Okay, so apparently every one of my slides, I'm throwing me back in the corner. So let me share, last slide, a few tips on how do you move a buyer to the most aware stage. I didn't want to overwhelm you with stuff, but I just wanted you to understand step one, unaware. The customer is unaware that they even have a problem, right? And remember, I said, don't assume that they know they have a problem. Always assume that they don't know they have a problem. And if you find out they're pretty aware of it, then move into the step two, which is problem aware. And the key here, one of the steps you want to begin with is figure out where they're spending money related to your solution. I mentioned Annette. She had looked at FPDS and in there found these contracts for cleaning HVAC units, and they were time and material, labor-based contracts. And her product displaces that. And so she was able to find where they were having those contracts, and now she's understanding who's buying stuff related to what she sells. Then she's going in and having meetings, and this is what you should do as well. Go in and ask problem and implication questions. Inside of Call Plan AI, that's what I teach in there. That's the product I'm building. It's around spin methodologies. It's a sales methodology, and the two middle questions, P and I for spin, are problem and implication questions. Problem questions are ones like, for example, I have here, what tends to build up on your coils or drain pans between service intervals? Now, she wants to figure out a natural way. You don't just drop it, right? But I support customers all across the country, and everybody's got a little different set of gunk on their HVACs or something. You know, what builds up on your guys? What's your biggest challenges? The key is these are never yes or no. You're trying to have a discussion with your customer. And then an implication is we're expanding upon that. Like, for example, you know, if you shut it down for cleaning for a day, how's that impact the rest of the facility or something? So you're asking questions. That's how you get them to be problem aware. You're asking questions around your solutions problems, the problems your solution resolves. And then when you're trying to get into solution aware, a simple thing you might consider is a product comparison handout. I used to do this a lot, and I loved it. I would find all the competitors, and I'd put my favorite in there, and I'd share this with the customer. I wouldn't make them do all the work to compare everybody. And then, of course, I would make sure that however I'm comparing it makes the product that I was trying to showcase look favorable. But I just want the customer to be aware of all the options. Mind if we come in and show you ours, right? So that's a really simple thing you might consider doing, a product comparison handout. There's all sorts of examples on the internet that you can find. Just go to Google and search product comparison handout templates, and you'll find a bunch. Step 4, product aware. So now in product aware, to get people to be aware of your product even more, I like general capability statements out there, but I'm recommending in this particular case that you consider making a dedicated capability statement, not to an agency, but around one product or solution that you have, because then you speak completely to it. You're able to share this. You can turn it into a deck and go in and brief it. If you're talking, for 5 minutes, you just help them become much more aware of your product. And then the last example, just running out of time here, I want to move forward, is most aware, right? In this particular case, you don't get any customer to be most aware, especially of your solution, your products, until you've had at least 4 meetings, right? Before that, they might like you. They might seem like they like you. But after 4 meetings, you have established a relationship with them. They are investing their time in. So they're signaling that they're most aware of your product. And they're trying to figure out, how do we choose you? How do we buy you if we want that? And so some ways you might be able to do that is do a demo with them but make sure you have a written set of current problems that they admit. So with Annette, I might say, do a pilot program with them, and that might be a paid pilot, but have a set of criteria they're measuring on. And the last thing is provide case studies from similar customers. Again, just sticking with Annette for today, she has case studies from commercial hospitals. She can bring those in And even if she has to leave off the names of the hospitals, she can bring those in and say, this was the challenge. This is what we did. And this was the result. When buyers see that, is really helping them understand how your product is the one that really took the other customer to the next level. Okay, I'm out of time here. I just want you to remember 3 things. Get the buyer to that problem aware stage. The problem needs to be big enough in their mind that they want to think about a solution. Then start talking about the solution. Hey, if you haven't registered for next week, we got a December 17th, a networking event. It's virtual. Go register for that. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is ending on time. I'm out of time. I will see you next time.